tell you that Google had to remove one person from the lecture. You can rejoin. Somebody was removed. I don't know who. So yeah, officially welcome. This is the 11th lecture. We just started the recording. There was a delay in the recording because Google complained about some user and kicked her out of the meeting, or him, and now they can rejoin. So it's about practice. And yeah, if you're celebrating Christmas tomorrow, so happy Christmas. This year around the world, people are using different decorations. Let's hope that the next Christmas will be a normal one. When it comes to our course, this is really the end. We had 3 topics to cover, and we actually covered them all. This is all done now. And we haven't skipped a single class even during the study week, but despite that, we are slightly behind in terms of what we were planning to cover, but that's why today we actually have practice. All the lecture materials, PDFs, everything is uploaded to the Google Sites. And when it comes to your midterm, you are the most successful generation in the history of this course. Nobody has had so far as many points on the average as you. So the grade average for you is above 82%. We have never seen anything like that. So we still haven't finished grading these assignments, but you can join the office hours today if you want to see your let's say results. If you were not sure about something, I can share my screen and then we can look at your individual task. So during office hours 5 to 6. Now, when it comes to the review, last week we finished the noun phrase in terms of the number. Foreign plurals were the most important thing we covered. We talked about gender. The most important, let's say, takeaway from that part of the lecture is that you should always remember this. English has biological gender. This is very weird among Indo-European languages. Most Indo-European languages are like Serbian, where muškarčina, so a macho man, is actually feminine, and devojčurak, a petite girl, is actually masculine. That's grammatical gender in Serbian, in German, in French as well. In virtually all Indo-European languages, English has biological gender, which means that you have masculine and feminine and neuter gender when you're not sure about whether it's masculine or feminine, like the baby. But that applies to animate, human, animate creatures, or in other words, human beings, or higher animals like dogs, horses, cows, etc. For lower animals like insects and for things, you use the neuter gender. And then we talked about reference very briefly. You are probably aware of how to use articles and determiners. We just mentioned the types of reference, such as specific, definite, indefinite, generic, unique, etc. So today we will do exercises on form and function of noun phrases. Exercises on foreign plurals and reference. For some reason, I seem to have loaded the wrong version of this presentation. So there are 3 types of exercises. Form and function is just one of them. So that's the first 40 minutes. Then we skip to the written exam, the sample of it. So we will not be able, of course, to do all the exercises on noun phrases, but those that we do are crucial for the final exam. So don't worry. After today's class, you will be more than ready to take on the challenge of the written exam. So without much further ado, we will start with task 1 in your workbooks. Of course, task 1 from the noun phrase. Task 2 you can do at home. I will upload the key to these exercises inside the lecture notes from this presentation. So the PDF that you download from the site will contain not only these slides, but additional slides for all the exercises that are mentioned but not done. Before we start the exercise, just a quick review. So when we talk about form of the noun phrase, that means understanding the internal structure of the noun phrase. And the internal structure of the noun phrase means that you always have the head. For example, discussion. In front of the head noun, you can have the pre-modifying noun. For example, practice or class discussion. You can then add one or more, and also one or more these pre-modifying nouns. So you can, for example, say human rights class discussion. You can have 2 or 3 pre-modifying nouns. Then come adjectives. Again, you can have many of them, up to 11 actually. So you can have something like controversial class discussion. Then come determiners, 3 of them, pre, center, or post determiner. That's the maximum. Usually you have only 1, but you can have up to 3. So for example, the controversial class discussion. And restrictors are adverbs in front of determiners, such as even the controversial class discussion. And then you can have post modification, even the controversial class discussion on LGBTQ rights, or a clause, this blah 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 discussion that is focused on LGBTQ rights. And very rarely nouns are followed by adjective phrases like secretary general, court martial, stars visible, surgeon general, etc. When it comes to functions, so this is the first time that we have 2 groups of functions, independent functions. That means that noun phrases are sentence elements: subject, verb, indirect, direct object, subject, object, complement, obligatory, optional, adverbials. For example, we did it last week. Last week is an adverbial, but realized as a noun phrase. That's not so uncommon. Actually, many very common adverbials are noun phrases. Last week, last year, the following week, the previous week, or let's say this time, tomorrow, or something like that. However, for the first time, we also have the dependent function. That means that the noun phrase is not a sentence element, it's a part of another phrase. So, for example, you can say, I bought the book, I forgot the book in the house. In the house is an adverbial, but in the house contains a noun phrase. That's what we mean that this is a dependent function. So in the house, when you say I forgot the book in the house is an adverbial, but it contains a noun phrase, the house. And this noun phrase completes, that's why it's called complement, the preposition. It completes the preposition and creates the prepositional phrase. So this function is called complement of the preposition. In Serbian, that would be dopuna predloga ili predloške fraze. So you cannot say, I forgot the book in. You have to say, I forgot the book in the, or I left the book in the house. You cannot say, I left the book in. So it finishes, it completes the prepositional phrase. So on page 82, this is the task. I can do the first one, and then we can ask for volunteers because there are many of you. Or we can go through the alphabetic order from Google. But so the task is to find noun phrases, any noun phrases, which means also pronouns, because as you know from the basic concepts in grammar, every pronoun is the head of a noun phrase. So the first noun phrase is both my brothers. And in this task, you have to identify the function and the structure. So the function is usually the simpler task. Both my brothers are younger than me. This is a subject. And then you should analyze the structure. That means the head and all those elements that can be in front or behind the head. So in front of the head, you can have restrictors, determiners, adjectives, pre-modifying nouns. Behind the head, prepositional phrases, clauses, finite, non-finite, and adjective phrases. Here, it's actually quite good. You have just both and my. Of course, you are familiar with page 69 in your workbook, where you have all the list of all common determiners. Here you have two. These are both determiners. Both is a predeterminer, and my is a central determiner. And that's it. This is the analysis. However, as I mentioned, you should find any noun phrase, even those that are inside other sentence elements. So this is the part in the course where we are no longer superficial. So does anybody see another noun phrase here? Anybody? I mean, I know
Me.
the answer.
Me.
Yes, you know the answer, and the answer is right. In both cases, you would say me. Yes, me is a noun phrase. And I told you that every pronoun is the head of a noun phrase. Of course, you will not have this in your midterm and in your final exam, because this is, let's say, an unpleasant example. We will try to make it still about basic concepts and basic structures, but in practice, we can also tackle these examples. So this is, by the way, complement of the preposition, because this me is part of a prepositional phrase then me. So this is this function that we talked about in the previous slide. This is the dependent function of a noun phrase. The noun phrase is not a sentence element, subject, object, complement, adverbial. It's actually part of a prepositional phrase, because you cannot stop there. You cannot say both my brothers are younger than me, right? You have to finish it. So this is, then is a preposition, right? So then can be a conjunction or a preposition. In this case, it's a preposition. So it needs to have a complement, which is normally a noun phrase. Now, let me check my list. So we have people who joined in the meantime. The last time I checked, there were 40 attendees. Now we have 49. Welcome, everybody. Is Alexa willing to do this, or somebody else? Alex is the first one in the list.
I'm not so sure. Sorry.
Okay. Any volunteers? I mean, I can do it also by myself, but it's nicer when it's interactive. So anybody? Anna Rudaljevic, Angela Jankovic, Andrea, somebody from the beginning of the list? Anybody willing to do this?
I can do.
Great. Okay. Anna.
Yes. Maybe the pretty girl with a funny red hat.
Yes, the pretty girl with the funny red hat is one huge noun phrase, but there's one before that. Remember, pronoun? You. Yeah, exactly. So the first one is you. Now, what would be the function of you? It's between the operator and the verb.
Object.
Is that usually between the operator and the verb? Do you find the object? For example, John likes cookies. Does John like cookies? You see, John ends up between operator and the verb in questions. What do we call this? Subject. So this change in questions is called subject operator inversion, right? You heard that term. Yes. So the inversion always, whatever is inside the inverted elements, that's actually the subject. So inversion is a perfect test to identify the subject. Yes, that's the subject, and you don't have to do anything. So the head is you, it's a pronoun, and there's no further, substructure. And then you have this wonderful phrase. What's the head of that? No, sorry, first, what's the function of that, Anna?
That would be the object.
Yes, exactly. That's the object. If it turns out that the January exam period gets cancelled, you know that there's a chance that they cancel or actually not cancel, postpone the January exam to February. It's being discussed, nothing has been confirmed. If that happens, maybe then we could have like an online midterm. In that case, like in this midterm, you will have to write OD. If we end up doing this face to face at the faculty, then if you just write O, it's still enough. But when I program the answers and grading, it has to make distinction between indirect and direct. Okay, so what's the head, Anna?
Girl.
Girl. So in the paper version of this test, you would circle it. In the online version, there will be a text box to fill. What's in front of it? What's the?
The is a determiner.
Okay, here in this exercise and in the final exam and in the general, these testing situations, especially now that we are in the noun phrase section, you have to know the subgroups from page 69. We discussed this predeterminers, central determiners, post determiners. Where does the belong? What kind of a determiner is it? Do you have
predeterminer?
Okay, it's very often at the beginning, but it's actually central. As a general rule, just remember articles and the are central. So everything that behaves like and the will be central. But of course, for the final exam, you have time to reread page 69. That's partially my fault. I told you in the earlier sections of the course that you only have to identify that something is a determiner. But now that we are analyzing the noun phrase, these subgroups are important, and you will see when we get to the second year, you get to the second year, I stay at the first year constantly, you move forward, you will have to know that distinction. It's relevant for syntax 3 and 4. You'll see grammar 3 and 4 courses. Okay, so that's central determiner. What's pretty, Anna?
An adjective.
Adjective, good. And what do you have behind the head noun? How does it begin? With what word does it begin? It begins with what? So there are three things you can have behind the prepositional phrase. Oh my God. Behind the head noun. A prepositional phrase, a clause, and an adjective. So this actually is a prepositional phrase because it starts with. So sorry, my bad. And that's it. Yeah, Anna, that was a good job. A very good job. Of course, you will be graded separately for functions and structures. So don't worry if anything, if you don't get one of those right, everything else is taken into consideration. Great. Any volunteers for the next one? Or Angela?
I could try.
Okay, great. That's Jovana. Okay, Jovana.
So all the articles that you see here is the subject, have been solved is the verb.
Great.
The articles is the head. All is predeterminer. D is central determiner.
Yes, exactly. And
U is a pronoun.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. You're right. But here we will actually make an exception to that rule that we analyze every single noun phrase, because this noun phrase is actually, when you think about it, inside the noun phrase. So you is inside that you see here. And that you see here, as you rightly said, is a post-modification of articles. So the question is, what is this? Is it a prepositional phrase, adjective, or a clause?
Well,
that you see here?
I think it's a clause.
Yes, it's a clause. It has its own subject and the verb. So it's a finite clause. Yes. And now you're right. You is a pronoun and it's a noun phrase that functions as a subject of you see here, but we will stop there. So once you find the noun phrase, we will not analyze if there are additional noun phrases inside, because in that case, in the previous example, we would also say that the funny red hat is a noun phrase that's inside the prepositional phrase. And sometimes, you know, believe me, in language, you can have up to 11 levels of this embedding. One phrase has another phrase, that phrase has another phrase inside of it, and that phrase has another phrase inside of it. So there are 11 levels of embedding. That's worse than Inception. So the movie. So here we will stop. So once you find a noun phrase, you will not look for noun phrases inside it. I think that simplifies life a bit. But thank you. This was good. So how about the next one? Any volunteers?
I can do it.
Yeah, I think it's Tiana.
Okay, so the first noun phrase is the train located at platform 6.
The train located platform 6. Good. What's the function?
So train is the head and it's a subject.
Yeah, it's a subject. Train is the head. What's in front of it? What's behind it?
So we have the, and this is central determiner. And then we have located at platform 6, and I think that this is a clause.
You don't think, you are right there. So, I mean, you do think, that's why you are right. But there should be no doubt. You are absolutely spot on right. Yeah, it's a clause, and this one is non-finite clause. Is there any other noun phrase here?
Yes, there is. It's London.
London, good. Now, what would be the function of London?
It's the complement of the preposition. Because
very good, very good, excellent. So there's for in front of it. For is a preposition. So for London would be obligatory adverbial here. But London is inside, so this is a dependent function, complement of the preposition. But this, I think you should just, you know, you did it perfectly. If somebody else has issues with that, just remember, whenever you have a preposition, you will probably have a noun phrase after that, which functions as a complement of the preposition. So virtually all prepositions are complemented by noun phrases. There are a couple of exceptions, but let's not go into those weird exceptions where the preposition is complemented by something else. We'll talk about it in the next semester. Great job. This was spot on. If in the final exam you just scored, you know, like 1/3 of points in the exercise on noun phrases, you will have two sentences, only 2 sentences in which you will have to analyze noun phrases. So you actually scored 50% of that exercise just now. Great. Any other volunteers for the next one?
Can I do it?
Yes, Sarah, of course.
Yeah, so they needed 3 times that amount of food for all these people. The first one is 3 times that amount of food.
Okay, great, but there is something in front of that.
They, yeah.
Don't forget the poor pronouns. Poor pronouns also require attention and care. Okay, what's the function of they? It's the head. It's a pronoun, so no structure, just the function.
Yes, and this is the subject.
This is the subject. Now, you said 3 times that amount of food for all those people, right? That's the noun phrase.
The head would be amount.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to tell you there is also another possibility that you can say for all those people is an adverbial, because you could say for all those people, we needed 3 times that amount of food. But you are right. We can analyze it. It's simpler if you analyze it, if we analyze it like you did. It's just that my animations are not set up like that. So, but you're right. The head is amount. Good. And the function, by the way.
That is a direct object.
Direct object. Okay. What's in front of that?
So 3 times is a predeterminant.
Yeah, very good. So once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, these are multipliers and predeterminers. It's very important that you analyze it as a single item. So not 3 and times separately, but 3 times. What about that?
That is essential.
That is a central determiner. Good.
And food would be a prepositional phrase.
Prepositional phrase. Now, in your analysis, for all those people is also a prepositional phrase, and it's a complement of the amount. That's actually a more elegant solution because you have just one noun phrase here. And by the way, it's possible for a noun phrase to have multiple prepositional phrases behind it. However, I analyzed it differently. I thought that for all those people, and that's possible, the test which I can, you are right, let's say, but I'm also right. This is where we see that this is not rocket science. It's more complex because there are multiple interpretations. I say for all those people is actually an adverbial. I can move it. I can say for all those people, comma, they need 3 times that amount of food. What would be the structure then? What's the noun phrase, the remaining noun phrase?
It will be all those people.
All those people. Excellent. What would be the function of that? Now things get a bit complicated, Sarah, but not too complicated.
So it's a complement of the
excellent. Complement of the preposition. What would be the head?
People.
People.
All is predeterminant, and those are central.
Yes, those is a central determinant. Excellent. So both our interpretations are correct. In your case, you actually have fewer things to write, so your interpretation is more efficient. Mine is more complicated, I guess. I'm a complicated person, but you did a great job. Thank you, Sarah. Any volunteers for the next one?
Can I try?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Shara?
Yes.
Okay.
So, several more complaints is the first noun phrase.
Now again, I change my interpretation. I analyzed it as about this, but you are right. Like in the previous example, you could say about this one matter alone, there are several complaints. So we can do your analysis as well. Don't worry. And I think I added this in my slides as a version 2. So don't worry, just go on. Tell me what the function of this is, several more complaints.
May this be the subject? I'm not sure.
It's a subject complement. There is
okay.
This is a subject complement. Okay, what's the head?
Complaints.
Complaints. What do you have in front of it?
It is a central determiner.
Several. Okay.
A preposition.
Several. No, it's not. You're right. It's a determiner, but it's not central. Several. Is several.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about more. That's a predeterminer.
No. Yeah. So sorry, I was talking about several. Several is actually post-determiner because it's a number. If you think about it, several is a number, but you don't know the exact number, but you know it's more than one, right? So several is like a number, and all numbers and quantifiers are post-determiners. More? What did you say more was?
Central determiner.
That's not possible. You cannot have post-determinant and then central, but you can have two post determiners. If you go to page 69, you'll see that more is actually listed as a post determiner, as a quantifier. So this is a post determiner, and in your interpretation, this is the end of analysis. No, not, because then you have to say what other noun phrase is. What's the other noun phrase, Shara?
This one matter alone?
One matter alone, and what would that be in your interpretation?
That would be the subject in that case.
No.
No?
Now, this one matter alone is a prepositional phrase which functions like an adverbial. But this one matter alone is inside about this one matter alone. So this is actually a dependent function. This noun phrase is in the service of about. So what do we call this when a noun phrase helps words such as for, about, in, at, create a phrase? This is, we had it previously, it's a complement of the preposition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but in my analysis, you would simply say this is the prepositional phrase at the end of the noun phrase. But as I said, I have your interpretation as well animated here. So as we discussed, and then it's a complement of the preposition. But in that case, by the way, since you also chose this analysis, what is the head?
Matter.
Matter. Okay, this is a I don't know why I didn't circle the head. This is central. What is one?
Post.
Post. Matter is the head, and what is alone?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's actually a very weird structure. It's not listed as a possible structure in the introductory slide, but sometimes it's possible. Like when you say 3 years ago, it's an adverb. So sometimes I should amend my initial slide. Sometimes noun phrases are followed by adverbs. So this is actually another famous example is 3 years ago. Although there are different interpretations for 3 years ago. Some say that it's actually an adverb phrase, but most people say it's a noun phrase. The years is the head, and ago is just an adverb which modifies it from behind. Okay, thank you. That was actually a very good interpretation. Thank you, Shara. Let's move to G, H, and I. Although we will probably have to pick up the pace if we want to present the final exam. So let's say that actually I can do these ones just so that we also do some additional exercises. So both these two surgical dressings is the first noun phrase. So you can say they have to be changed every second day. So this is one big noun phrase. It's at the beginning in front of an auxiliary, so it has to be the subject. The head is dressings. So the head is both these two surgical dressings. This is about dressings. That's the head. And both is a predeterminer. These is a central. Two is a post determiner. This is a wonderful example where you have 3 types of determiners in the same noun phrase at the same time. And you also have the adjective surgical. However, that's not the only noun phrase here. You also have every second day. The noun phrase here functions as an adverbial. So we don't care about optional or obligatory here. The important thing is that it's a sentence element and it's an adverbial. By the way, it's optional, but who cares? In this exercise, we don't care. The head is they. Every is a central determiner, whereas second, we mentioned all numbers, ordinal and cardinal numbers. So 1 and first, 2 and second, they are all post determiners. And that's it. That's for G. For H, you have a sentence about somebody who likes to marry into the money. So the subject is both Jane's last 2 husbands. They were twice her age, so they, that's the subject. husbands is the head, because of course you would replace the noun phrase with plural, so the only noun inside this noun phrase that is plural is husbands. Both is predeterminer. Jane's is a central determiner. So the genitive case, I mentioned it several times, but now we see it in action. The genitive case very commonly works as a determiner, because if you think about it, when you say Jane's husbands, it's like saying her husbands. Her is also a determiner. Her can also be a pronoun when you say I see her, but her, when it's in front of a noun, is a determiner. So be careful about those words. We discussed them a long time ago. Last and two are not not two words. They are one. There are two words, but they are one determiner. Last two is a post determiner. So we treat these things like last two, first two. These are all treated as a single post determiner. You have it on page 69. However, there's another noun phrase here, twice her age. This thing functions as a subject complement. Both Jane's last two husbands were old, but instead of old, you say twice her age. So this is definitely the position where you have a subject complement. And also the verb to be is always, when it's a lexical word, followed by either an adverbial or a subject complement. So here it's a subject complement. The head is age. Twice is predeterminer. Her is central determiner. Twice, three times, once, multipliers, not numbers, multipliers, and fractions like 2/3. These are predeterminers. So numbers are post-determiners, multipliers and fractions, so mathematics is predeterminers. The journey from Paris to Rome on Sunday was very tiring. What was very tiring? It. What is it? The journey from Paris to Rome on Sunday. So this whole thing at the beginning is one huge subject. The head is journey, because it's about journey. The is a central determiner. And then behind it, you have multiple prepositional phrases. So what kind of a journey was it? It was a journey from Paris to Rome. So from Paris to Rome is one PP, although this prepositional phrase contains another prepositional phrase, right? To Rome inside it. So Paris to Rome is the journey. And when was the journey? On Sunday. So you have two prepositional phrases here. The girl at the disco last week rang me up yesterday. Okay, so that's the next sentence. You don't see it. I have a workbook in front of me. This is about she ringing me up yesterday. So the girl at the disco last week is the subject. Girl is the head. The is a central determiner. And at the disco last week is fundamentally one of two things. Depends how you want to analyze it. If you just look at the way it's written here, it's a prepositional phrase. But in your mind, it reads like the girl who was at the disco last week. In that case, since this is how you interpret it, it's actually a elliptic finite clause. You will not have an example like this in your midterm. No, sorry, this is not in the midterm. This is in the final exam. But in real life, this is common. And you will be using it and analyzing this in grammar 3 and 4 in the second year. But you know, strictly speaking, you can take it at a face value. It starts with a preposition. It's a prepositional phrase, or you can analyze the underlying structure that's invisible because we are lazy and we don't pronounce everything. Then it's a finite clause. Then there's me. She rang me up yesterday. So me is the direct object. And there's another noun phrase, yesterday, which functions as an adverbial. I put a question mark in front of this because some dictionaries treat words such as tomorrow, yesterday, today as adverbs. But most dictionaries treat them as nouns because historically and even to this very day, you understand that yesterday is a day. It is a yesterday. If you listen to Stevie Wonder, and he has a song called "Yester Me," "Yester You," "Yesterday." So if you are creative, you can use "yester" even today as an adjective. Yester me, yester you, yesterday. Okay, my few real friends would never desert me. So they would never desert me. This is the subject. You can replace it with pronoun. The only noun is the head, so friends. My is central, few is post, and real is an adjective. And of course, pronouns are heads of noun phrases, so me is a direct object and a noun phrase at the end of the sentence. The next sentence, what a silly fool he is really weird in the sense that it's flipped, right? You would normally say he's such a silly fool, but if instead of such you use what, all WH words in English should go to the beginning if there's only one WH word. So instead of he's such a silly fool, you say what a silly fool he is. So this looks like it's in the subject position, but it's not. It's actually a subject complement, because normally you would say something like he is such a silly fool. And then the head, of course, is fool. What in this case is a predeterminate. You actually have it listed also on page 69. Is a central and silly is an adjective. However, that's not the whole story, because he is also in this sentence and it's a pronoun which functions as the subject. And now we are running out of time. We have only 45 minutes remaining for this class, and I have to present you the final exam. So I will skip the remaining exercises because this took more time than I anticipated. You will have the key to the exercise, this one, and also I plan to do this exercise number 10. This is what you will have in your final exam. You will have a past paragraph to use articles in it. Most people get 90% there. The only reason why somebody messes it up is because of the use of articles with proper nouns and names. So here, for example, you have to say a big red Porsche, because this is not Porsche as a brand name. This is Porsche as an individual car in front of you, let's say. So here you have to say a big red Porsche, not like Porsche is a brand name. So you will have key to that, but we actually have this exercise in the final exam sample. And of course, I will upload the key to this exercise. So these are plural nouns. I will just quickly rush through this because these words are what you can have in the final exam. So oasis is in plural oases. So this is irregular plural, so it's not oasis. Oasis is, no, it's oases. This looks like English suffix, but it's not, because you are actually using the original suffix. Still life is compound, so you will only pluralize the second part of it, because still is an adjective, and in compounds you only pluralize the head noun or human gender specific nouns. If you have something like woman doctor, that would be women doctors. But here the trick is that actually in this particular word, it's not still lives, because that would be like lives, so that we are living. This is about painting, so this is an exception that you probably tackled in your secondary education, so it's still lives. That's really a very freaky exception. To su mrtve prirode, the paintings of bananas, pineapples, and let's say glasses also placed on a table. Memorandum can be either memoranda or memorandums. This word is becoming regular. Belief is only beliefs, not believes, because that's the verb, right? So that's also kind of an exception. Chassis, we mentioned it in the lecture last week, is the word which has a different pronunciation but the same spelling in plural. So chassis is chassis, but spelled the same. This is from French. Scarf is in the same group as life and belief, but here you have two possibilities, scarves or scarves. It's not like wolf, where you have to say wolves. This is one of the words which has both forms available. In your workbook, you have the list of those words like wolf that only have the irregular form with V, although that was actually the regular form in Old English. Cactus, cactuses, or cacti, whichever you choose is okay. One is scientific, the other is everyday. Videos is now regular plural, but it was borrowed, of course. Woman doctor, compound, both are nouns, and in that case you would again normally pluralize only the head noun, but in this case the first noun, woman, modifier, is a human gender specific noun. In that case you also pluralize it, so it's women doctors. Place is place. It's a kind of fish. It's like deer, or sheep. Many animals have the same form in singular and plural. If you think about it, yeah, there are very few. Okay, there are not very few, but there are a few nouns that behave like this, including sheep. Granting aid, compound, you only pluralize the head noun. You don't pluralize other nouns unless they are human and gender specific. So it's not grants in aids, it's just grants in aid. Tableau is French, and you can make it either regular or irregular, but the pronunciation is the same. Tableaux, spelled with S and X at the end, are pronounced exactly the same. It's just that you can choose whether to use the French spelling or the English spelling. Hoof is like scarf. It can be hoofs or hooves. And appendix can be appendixes or appendices. This is not the same in meaning, but since it's not listed here which meaning you have in mind, slepo crevo or dodatak knjizi, we can have actually both. So there will be other examples on number solved for you, including, let's say, this exercise, which is entirely solved, and also this exercise, but you will have to practice this at home. When you type in the word study into Google image search, you'll see that it's a student doing some work also independently. So blame this on Corona. We simply ran out of time. So exam. That's the last part of the last class. We have 40 minutes remaining. So the gay exam happens on January the 22nd, 2021. If nothing happens in the meantime and the January examination period does not get postponed or something like that. It's a Friday, almost a month from today, so you can enjoy the holidays and still have time to prepare for this exam. It starts at 6:30 Central European time, and it lasts 3 hours, but not that. The reason for that is that we have 90 minutes for midterm number 1, and if you don't plan to take the written exam, znači ako ne izlazite na ispit, you don't need to register for the exam. Ne morate da se prijavite na ispit. It simply means that then you will leave after 90 minutes. But if you're taking both the midterm and the written exam, you have 3 hours, which you should organize like 90 minutes for the midterm, 90 minutes for the written exam. But since the midterm can be done in, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes, it's actually, I warmly recommend that you take both the written and the midterm, because this is a unique opportunity for you to have more time to do the final exam. Normally you have only 90 minutes, but since the midterm is something that you can do quickly, you actually have more time for the written exam. And for the written exam, you have to register, morate da se prijavite. If there is no registration, we cannot register the grade. Ne može vam se upisati ocena, and it's as though nothing had happened. Really, there's no way to bypass this. So if you don't register, and you pass, you didn't pass, because there's no way to put the grade into the register because you're not in the register. And it's all electronic, so I cannot just come up with a piece of paper. So we have 4 classrooms for that: auditorium, 107, 108, 307. And this is only chapter 1, 2, and 3, so your workbook, actually basic concepts, words and nouns, pronouns, and the noun phrase. So since this will be a very challenging period in the history of higher education, we are doing this in the pandemic. So organizationally, I would like to ask you to pay attention to the fact that in the same time slot, we had to squeeze in 3 other exams, but with fewer number of people: Grammar 2, History of the English Language. This tip set is tumačenje i prevođenje srednjoengleskih tekstova. That means that there will be many people there, and we will have to move from one classroom to another to make sure to see who fits where, how we run out of space, because we have to remain social distancing. So make sure that you are in front of the faculty building 10 minutes ahead of the exam, and then you can enter 10 minutes before the exam, because we may start ushering you into the classrooms before the allocated time slot. That's it when it comes to organization. And for some reason my animations crashed, but okay. I will restart with the PowerPoint. Sorry about this, I don't know what happened. Yeah. There was an error. So this is where we stopped. Now let's do the written exam, the sample that you have in your workbook on page 180. Again, I will do my best to walk you through this. We cannot do it interactively because of time restrictions, but the first exercise is something that you know very well. We did it in the midterm. You scored generally very well in this exercise. So parts of speech, nouns, verbs, auxiliaries, they are listed there. The only feature before I actually start doing the midterm is this part. You will see that there is, I have to explain this. So it says 6 points, minimum 2. This number, a minimum, means that you have to score at least 2 points. So there are 6 points in total, but you need to score at least 2 points. So you may ask me, okay, what happens if I don't score the minimum? Well, we tolerate if, among different exercises, the number of points below the minimum is 2, 3, 3.5. But more than that, we cannot tolerate, because, by the way, if you score only minimum in every exercise, you cannot pass. The minimum is really low. The minimum is always below 50%. The reason why we have it is that there's no oral exam in this exam, And since this is considered a fundamental course, when we were accrediting our curriculum, this course was under special scrutiny, and they analyzed our assessment methods, the accreditation commission, and this was recommended as a means to ensure that students know at least a little bit about every topic. And when you think about it, it actually makes sense. Because if you just leave 3 exercises or noun phrases blank, that means that you didn't take time at home to learn about noun phrases. Maybe you have perfect score in the remaining exercises, but you don't know 1/3 of the course. And that's not okay, right? So that's why we have a minimum. So minimum is very low. It's below 50%. It's usually around 33%, like here. So if you just score the minimum, you cannot pass. But you need to have the minimum so that we see that you know a little bit about every part of the course. But we do tolerate if you, for example, have in 2 exercises, if you don't score the full minimum, we will tolerate that, of course. You will have problems if you leave 3 exercises blank, so don't do that. Okay, so the first exercise is the one which I just showed you. What is the restaurant like? You know that from your grammar book and textbook, and this is something that, well, I don't want to reveal too much, but let's say that very often the examples that you get in the exam are actually the examples, some of the examples are those that we have in the workbook. We think it's fair, right? You're under a lot of stress, you're taking the exam, there should be something that you're familiar with. So what is the restaurant like? It's a preposition because it's fundamentally the restaurant is like a dream, like a castle. So this is preposition stranding. What are you talking about? What is this about? All these constructions have preposition at the end. Although he studied hard, he didn't pass the exam. This was evil more than 10 years ago when we gave this in the exam. But the most important thing is that although introduces a clause, he studied hard. So this is a conjunction. We'll have to finish the job however long it takes, however, could be treated as a conjunction, and we actually tolerated conjunctions, but fundamentally, however, modifies long. So however long, right? It's related to long, so it modifies long as an adjective. And long as an adjective can be only modified by adverbs. Only adverbs can modify adjectives, so this is an adverb. No, thank you, I've had more than enough. You know this example, pronoun. Enough refers to, for example, biscuits that somebody offered you when you said, like, take some biscuits. No, thank you, I've had more than enough. Enough, it refers to biscuits. I'll give you double the price. You know this now. Double is a predeterminer multiplier. Friendly as she was, she offered help. Friendly is an adjective, although it ends in ly. It's one of those 24 adjectives that end in ly, like friendly, brotherly, motherly, cowardly, silly, lovely. That you have a list in the PDFs from lectures, and you have a link to a page on the internet which gives the whole 36 of those nouns. So it's an adjective. Now comes the part which you haven't been tested on because of the pandemic and the COVID-19 emergencies. So this is the stuff from midterm number 2, which you still haven't had, but that's actually about the verb phrase. You remember I told you in the practice classes, in the final exam, you will have to know the past tense and the past participle. So this is about the verbal paradigm. You cannot be experts in English if you don't know the forms of the verbs, right? So it will be a mixed bag of regular and irregular verbs, or regular verbs that have some spelling changes. Here, of course, raise and rise are two, like, you know, brothers from a different mother. The first one is completely regular, but Rise, like the evil brother, is completely irregular. So Rise is has the forms of rose and risen, whereas Raise is raised and raised. Spread, in this particular exam, was introduced because it was thought that it would be easy, but surprisingly people did not know that this actually has the same form everywhere. Spread, spread, spread. It's like cut, 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 or hit, hit, hit. It's in the same group. So surprisingly, I have statistics going back to 2005 actually for these exams. So spread was done poorly. And kneel, which is actually a quite rare verb, was done way better, and it's irregular. It's kneel, knelt, knelt. Withdrew, withdraw, withdrew, withdrawn. It's, if you know draw, you know how to make withdraw. So it's simply about prefixation. And of course, these days, this is not a problem. The last word, back then it was a problem because there was no movie about Anna and Elsa. Now it's, everybody knows that it's freeze, froze, and frozen. Thank you, Disney. And that's the second task. And as you can see, so every verb phrase carries 0.5 points. So you need to know 2, not half of them to score the minimum. So not all 6, but only 2. So the minimum is always under 50%. It's just that you shouldn't be able to pass if you leave 3 exercises blank. That's the whole point. You need to at least do something in every exercise, or maybe leave just 1 of them blank. Okay, so underline the verb phrases in the following sentence, determine their type and categories. So you know this, we did it on Tuesday. By the end of the practice class, you were actually really good at this. Again, some of these examples are from the workbook. We do it often. Maybe one of the examples will be from the workbook. So by the end of the year, he will have been working in the company for 15 years. Will have been working is the verb phrase. It's finite and complex. Tense, when you have a modal verb, is determined by the auxiliary, modal auxiliary. So will is present, would is past. So here you have will, so it's present. Then you have to look at present, at the aspects, so perfective and progressive, plus or minus. Well, here you have ing, you have as an auxiliary for perfective constructions. You have the past participle, which is common for perfective constructions. So this is plus perfective, plus progressive. Mood is indicative, voiced is active, and there is a modal verb, so modality is plus. So you will have 3 verb phrases. You have to do at least 1. You have to score at least 1 point, but don't worry, when we say 1 point, we actually also take into consideration separate elements inside the analysis. So if you get 1 or 2 of these categories wrong, you will still get some points. It's just that you shouldn't be completely wrong, right? So we do partially score these things. So if, for example, you write finite simple, but the rest is okay, of course that you will score. Or if you, for example, mess up the aspect, but everything else is okay, of course, again, there will be points. There will be no points only if it's absolutely wrong. And the one way that it can be absolutely wrong is if you don't identify the verb phrase. So if you don't underline the verb phrase, even if it's absolutely correct, we cannot give you points because we don't know what verb phrase you're talking about, right? So always, if you are doing a paper test, make sure that you underline the verb phrase. Okay, so his physical condition seems to have been affected by the accident. This is again from the workbook. We have been really generous in 2007, it seems. Seems is finite and simple. It has the S suffix, so it's present. Since it's simple, it cannot express any aspect categories or modal categories, so everything else will be at the default setting. So it is non-perfective, non-progressive, indicative, active, and non-modality. That's why this is called the present simple tense. It has every verbal category at its default setting. So non-perfective, non-progressive, indicative, active, non-modality. And you will have complex finite, simple finite, and you will definitely have something non-finite. So we tend to represent all types of phrases. So finite, non-finite, simple, and complex. So to have been affected is a non-finite, complex verb phrase. As soon as you know it's non-finite, you know the tense, mood, and modality will be nothing. So you can just write minus there or zero. The only things that you can analyze in non-finite phrases are aspect and voice. So it's perfective and non-progressive because it contains have and been. And it's passive because it contains be and the past participle. So it's, and by the way, it's followed by a by phrase. So whenever something is followed by a by phrase, it should be passive, right? That's how passive is usually formed. The subject goes to the by phrase. So here you can see that there's a by phrase. So even if you're not sure in the analysis of the verb phrase, the presence of by the accident tells you that the verb phrase is passive. Now that brings us to the fourth exercise, which is about plurals. As I mentioned, you will have some regular plurals, you will have some irregular plurals, and you will have some plurals that deal with compounds. The rules in compounds are very simple. You usually should pluralize only the head noun of a compound. However, the exception is that there are compounds which contain human gender-specific nouns, like woman doctor. In that case, you also pluralize the modifying nouns, so it's not woman doctors, it's women doctors, or man children. But there's a third exception. There are compounds which do not contain a noun, like close-up in cinematography, a close-up. That in that case, you put the suffix at the end of the compound. So close-up ends up being close-ups, but passer-by becomes passers-by because passer is a noun. So you pluralize the head noun, passers-by, not passer-bys. But close-up becomes close-ups because close is a verb and up is an adverb. So these are the rules. Man of letters, well, letters is already in plural, so this is obvious that you will only pluralize the head. So this becomes man of letters. Belief, we already had it, it's beliefs. This is an exception in order to not confuse this word with the verb he believes. Louse is irregular, mouse, mice, louse, lice. It's the same pattern for some irregular nouns. Series is a series, right? That's another irregular one. Dilemma is actually regular, so it's dilemmas. Libretto is from Italian, but these nouns are becoming regular, if you remember from last week's lecture. So you can write either librettos or libretti, or you can write both. Whichever you choose. You can choose one, or you can write in both, but you will not get extra points if you write both. So choose whichever one you like. Professional, if you're a musician, you would use libretti. Librettos is for non-musician. We already mentioned this word. We use it very common. Chassis, chassis, but no difference in spelling. Now you have another compound, court-martial. Martial is an adjective, court is a noun, so you will always pluralize only the noun, so courts-martial, not courts-martials. Criterion, criteria, that's Greek, and take off is a compound, but take is a verb, off is a adverb, so you will not say takes off, you will say take offs. In this case, when no element of the compound is a noun, you pluralize the whole compound. So this is a nice distinction between, let's say, passer-by, which becomes passers-by, and take off, which becomes take-offs. Then comes the exercise that we couldn't practice in the first part of the lecture or practice. That's the exercise on the use of articles. So usually, as I mentioned, people score 90%, and this is the only exercise where the minimum is at 50%. Usually, the minimum is below 50%. Why we did it? Because everybody does it correctly, so we are pretty confident that you will also do it very well. So you should always read the instructions. So here you are not allowed to use, let's say, all the determiners. So not everything that is on page 69. You are only allowed to use a, an, the, and the zero. So you choose among four central determiners. So can you go by train? That's use of articles in set expressions. Indian Ocean is a name, so you have to know how to use articles with proper nouns for oceans and, let's say, also rivers. You always use the. That's why you say the Danube, but that's also why you say the Indian Ocean. For mountain ranges like Himalayas, you also use the, but for mountains you use zero. So Mount Everest, but the Himalayas. Celia is sure she's seen now here, in this particular, let's say, final exam. I have analysis, as I mentioned. Very few people got this right. Most people wrote an UFO, but you don't pronounce it as with a vowel. In pronunciation, it starts with y, UFO, right? So there's no it's a mistake to write an. It's actually a UFO. And of course, this is a set expression. You say the other day. Exercise in general, this is generic reference for uncountable nouns. Exercise is good for, normally you would say your body, but you're not allowed to say use any other determinant except and the zero, so you have to say the body. Exercise is good for the body. Theoretically, even a body would work here. We can be sure about the history of the human race. That's generic reference. But in this particular example with man, it's when you use zero article with man, you don't mean a masculine individual, you mean the human race, but it's considered sexist these days. Although we weren't there at the time of the dinosaurs, again, generic reference. This is the front room. This is specific definite reference. You're in that room, you're showing the room, so you use the for is in good order, so we'll probably cover it. And now this carpet is not there, you haven't bought it, you're thinking about it, you cover it with a carpet. And that's it. The sixth exercise, this is the easiest of them all. This is where most students get almost 100% correct. Just make sure that you read the paragraph so that you don't just start it. I read the paragraph, so we don't have time, so I will just read you the solution. So I am very sorry to hear about your mother's illness, and I am glad that you are going to Scotland to to see how she is. It will be nice for her to see you. Of course, I will look after Tim. We thoroughly enjoyed having him last year, and my dog missed him after he, now because this happened earlier, after he had left. And then once you re-establish a temporal reference, you can continue using simple past. Looked for him everywhere. Will you bring him on Tuesday afternoon, or if that doesn't suit you, anytime on Wednesday? Do not or don't bother to bring dog food. I have plenty. I hope you will have time to have tea with me when you bring Tim, and that by then you will have, or you will have had, better news of your mother. Love, Jane. The seventh exercise is about the use of the passive voice. We practice this for one whole practice class, so you should be experts on this. And here it's indicated if you have more than one possibility, like in the final exercise, E. So nobody has ever spoken to me like that. I have never been spoken to like that before. Or, you know, we would even tolerate, I have never been spoken to like that. If you meet before, we would tolerate. We are focused on the verbal construction in particular. People will laugh at you if you wear that silly hat. You will be laughed at if you wear that silly hat. Her sudden arrival must have shocked him. He must have been shocked by her sudden arrival. Are they renovating the city library? Is the city library being renovated? And now, in the final exercise, you have a sentence that has a clause as its object. So the first thing that you do in those instances is to use dummy it to passivize the verb phrase, but you leave the object where it originally is in the active sentence. So it is said that the suspects were working undercover at the time. What you can do is called subject extraction. So you take the subject of the subordinate clause and make it the subject of the main clause. So the suspects are said, but now since you took the subject out of your subordinate clause, the subordinate clause no longer has a subject, and you know that verb phrases without a subject are non-finite. So this verb phrase now becomes non-finite, so the suspects are said to have been working undercover at the time. We are in the domain of verbs, so the next exercise is again about the verb phrase, and this is something that you again know very well. We practiced it on Tuesday. My brother wasn't in London last month, so you couldn't have seen him there. I usually can't get a seat on the bus, but in the morning. But this morning, what would you say? Oh, I forgot that one. Was able to get. So that specific ability in the past. Here it is. Was able to get. You needn't have turned off the TV. It wasn't disturbing me, maybe not, but it was disturbing me, and I must finish this paper by tomorrow morning. And finally, you shouldn't have left your dog locked up in the bathroom. No wonder it made such a mess. You shouldn't have left. And now we get to the final parts of the exam where you have very specific tasks related to something that is not simply language use, but is really grammar and syntax. So one of them is something that you already know very well from midterm, from basic concepts in grammar. This is something that you will be constantly doing, analyzing sentence elements, putting optional elements in the brackets. After having taken all the lessons is an optional adverbial. The candidates is the subject. Were eager is not the verb, because the verb is were. That was a common mistake in this particular written exam, that's Serbian analysis. To bi se zvao na srpskom priderski deo predikata, but in English we don't look at it that way. We say that verb is the verb, and then eager to take the driving test is a subject complement, and that's the analysis. So optional adverbial after having taken all the lessons, subject, verb, and the subject complement. The members of the committee, they, so that's the subject, couldn't decide is the verb. What they couldn't decide is how to define their strategy in the future. So that's like saying they couldn't decide the best strategy. So that's just SVO. This is a relatively simple sentence. It just looks complicated. The manager gave whoever asked a week off. He gave them a week off. So the manager is the subject, gave is a verb. Whoever asked, instead of that, you could say them. That's the indirect object. And what was given was a week off. That's the direct object. So it's SVOO or SVOIOD. In the online version, you would have to specify OI versus OD. In the written exam, you can just say SVOO. The French teacher, subject, finds, verb, what? Her name, that's the direct object. Too difficult to pronounce, that's the subject, that's the object complement. So her French teacher finds her surname terrible. SVOC. Complex transitive. My friend from Canada, he or she, subject, verb lived in Vancouver, obligatory adverbial. For 10 years, optional adverbial. The 10th exercise is about transformations. Finish each of the following sentences in such a way that it means exactly the same as the sentence printed before it. So it's about hypothetical past, modal past, subjunctive, and those things. Imagine we were on a beach now is what you can say for it would be nice to be on a beach now. I'm sorry I didn't work hard enough. So this is visual thinking about something that already happened. So it's hypothetical meaning in the past. So you have to use the past perfect. If only I had worked harder. If only I had studied harder. If only I had tried harder, whatever. Regrettably, I had to tell everyone the truth about his past. You did it, but you wish it was not necessary. So it's again hypothetical meaning in the past. So I wish I had not told everyone the truth about his past. This is the reason, by the way, why I would like to have this midterm, sorry, not midterm. This is also in the midterm, right? Midterm is better in face-to-face because there are so many possibilities that you cannot really program them into the online platform. It's high time right now, so it's about present hypothetical meaning. So it's high time you, and then not had started, but just started. But it's also a mistake to say start because you need hypothetical meaning for the present time orientation. It's high time you're starting doing your homework. There's no need for you to drive me, just call a taxi, please. I'd rather you just called a taxi, or I'd rather you would call a taxi, whether you're talking about calling it right now or in the near future over the next minute or two. Now comes the 11th exercise, which we did at the beginning of this class. So it's about noun phrases. You have to underline and analyze the structure and functions, syntactic functions of noun phrases. You were really good at this, so I'm hopeful that you will be good also in the exam. The only issue in the written exam is that in this exercise, the number of gaps is not always corresponding to the number of noun phrases. In the first one, it's actually okay. So his arrogant attitude at a meeting, that's the subject. You circle the head, it's attitude. You write function subject, and the structure is his is a central determiner, arrogant is adjective, then you have a head, and then you have a prepositional phrase. This is how you would do it in the written exam, or theoretically you can also write those same things above the noun. So that made everybody present very angry. Everybody present is the second noun phrase. The head is everybody. Its function is direct object. Everybody present was made very angry because or due to his arrogant attitude. So the structure is head plus adjective. This is very rare, but it's possible. Somebody absent, somebody present, everybody absent, everybody present, etc. Secretary General, there are sometimes adjectives behind the head of the noun. She showed me all the books I asked for. So who is she? The girl working in the library. That's one big subject noun phrase. The head is girl. And the structure is actually quite straightforward. The is a central determiner. Girl is, of course, the head. Working in the library is a clause. So this whole thing is a non-finite ing clause. You can also write that above the elements of the verb phrase. Here, the number of gaps does not correspond to the number of phrases. So there are 3 noun phrases. The second one is me, and me is just the head, right? Its function is indirect object, and that's it. The third verb phrase is all the books I asked for. That's the direct object. The head is books. And the structure is predeterminer, determiner, head, and a clause. I asked for clause. And in the last part, a lot of seats have already been taken by the students of linguistics. A lot of seats is the subject, and the head is seats. Very few people did this correctly 13 years ago when this was the test given to the students. Many people circled lot as a head. That's not correct. The head is actually seats. A lot of is a determiner, and not just any determiner, it's a quantifier. It's mentioned on page 69. So it's a subject which is actually quite simple. Post determiner, quantifier plus head. And the second phrase here is the students of linguistics. It's preceded by, so it's a complement of the preposition. The head is students. The structure is determiner, central determiner, head, and a PP. That's actually the most difficult exercise in the test. You will have to, unfortunately, because of what Corona did to our semester, you will have to do practice of this on your own, but you will have all the key. You will have the key to all the exercises. I will make sure I upload them by tomorrow morning. I have to prepare some of the keys. And yeah, there are actually 2 additional exercises I forgot, but they are usually 100% accurate. So the next one is about recognizing whether the nouns are countable or uncountable. So that's fundamentally about nouns and how they agree with the verb, whether the verb should be singular or plural. So it's partially about nouns, partially about the verb phrase. So depends on the exercise. Depends on individual sentence, but demand here requires less, not fewer, because demand is not countable in this case. Now, B is about your general knowledge about how to use pre-modifying expressions and numbers in front of a noun. So it's a 50 kilometer or 50 kilometers, but not this in the middle where you pluralize the kilometers. So you should either use the singular or you should use the genitive, but you cannot make pre-modifying noun plural. So you will never say kitchens, cabinets. It has to be kitchen, cabinet. And this applies to every pre-modifying noun. So this is something that you should know, but here, let's say, actually, not so many people knew this. This was not done very well. The rest of it was okay in this particular test. We do not hear much news, or theoretically, you could also say a lot of news, but that's, let's say, much is a better choice, but both are okay. So each determiner, as a determiner, needs something that is countable. So you have to say each bag. You cannot say baggage or luggage. And cattle is actually pluralia tentum. Cattle is always plural. So you have to say how many cattle were grazing on the field. And the last task is about using pronouns. You know this from the midterm exercises where you have to use proforms. Pronouns are just a subtype of proform. So we did it a long time ago when we talked about substitution test. The committee has reached its decision. The people with whom I'm working are extremely friendly. One must look after oneself. Nobody called me. Did they? This is like question tag. This is from the first class when we talked about operators. Yeah, I didn't show it. And if somebody, anybody needs help, they can ask me. This is again usually 100% accurate. I mean, students generally do this very well. So we ran out of time. So I should now wish you happy holidays, etc. Tell you that this is the end, but not of the lecture, actually of the whole course. But we have some time for feedback, questions about the course, about the lecture, whatever. I will stop the recording. And Grammar of English 1 is no more. Yes.